understand all of the challenges that you all are facing as this continues to unfold. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and go through really focusing on the CARES Act funding, which we were able to announce this funding on April 8th. So we've put this together pretty quickly, and anybody that's ever worked for the federal government or with government before, you know that is really fast for us. So we'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll look forward to answering as many questions as we can at the end of this. All right, if you'll go ahead and advance the next slide, please. All right, so again, we're here, we're open for business. I'm in the middle, and then there's also Juliana, Mascelli, and Kate Folsom. Please, again, I just can't reiterate strongly enough to be in touch with us if you have any questions, and to let us know what's going on with you all. Okay, next. Okay, so the CARES Act. Congress passed the CARES Act, and as part of that, it gives $75 million to the National Endowment for the Arts. Some of you may know, but in case you don't, pretty much all of the funding that we get from Congress every year is always basically going to go out in two different main ways. 40% automatically goes to the state arts agencies in all of the states in the U.S. territories, as well as the 6 regional arts organizations for them to run their own sub-granting programs. So I do want to make sure that you all are in touch with your state arts agencies as well as your regional arts organization, because they will also be giving out CARES Act funding through their own guidelines and how they're sort of organizing that for themselves. So those are also potential resources for you. The other 60% goes out via direct grants. So you all, eligible organizations apply to us. It will be adjudicated through a panel process, as all of our funds and direct grants are, and then out to nonprofit organizations. And we are really, with this funding, it is really, to respond, to everything, all of the hardships that we know you all are facing. We know that has been layoffs. We know that has been watching your gigs and touring opportunities, your festivals, your presentations be sort of indefinitely postponed or canceled or have to move online, or just completely spinning and still figuring out what you're doing. And the goal behind this funding is really about jobs, helping to preserve as many of those jobs as possible, and helping you all keep the doors open. So paying your rent, your mortgage costs, your utility costs, so that you can keep your doors open and keep serving your communities. And I do have some construction going on in the apartment above and below me. So if you hear any hammering, I hope not, but we'll get through this. So again, the goal is really about jobs and about keeping the doors open, which if you're used to applying to us, this is a really different kind of mindset from the normal application that you would have come to us for. So we'll be talking about that more. Go ahead and advance the next slide, please. All right, so who is eligible to apply for CARES Act funding? So basically, as part of an effort to really move this funding out quickly, and based on the amount of funding that we received, in order to be eligible to apply for CARES Act funding, you have to have been awarded an Arts Endowment grant over the past 4 years. That would be beginning in fiscal year 2017 up through those who were just, I think last week, notified that they've been offered a grant as the result of our March council meeting. You also have to be able, as always, to meet the legal requirements. It's federal funding, so it's US taxpayer dollars. So there are legal requirements that are attached to those dollars. You have to have your nonprofit status, your 501c3 status at the time of applying to us for CARES Act funding, or be a unit of government or a federally recognized tribal government. You also need to be up to date on any final reports from past funding that is due to us. So if you have an overdue grant report, you want to make sure that you get that in and are in touch with us to let us know so that you can go ahead and submit your CARES Act application. For the CARES Act, we can only accept one application per eligible organization. But I want to clarify that that one application per organization is just for the CARES Act. It does not mean that if you applied for Artworks, which is now called Grants for Arts Projects, it's separate from that. So just one application per eligible organization for the CARES Act funding. Next slide, please. All right. Oh, and if we can, I think that advanced, there we go. Yes. So the grants that we will be giving out directly can go towards basically three main areas. Salary support, so that's for any positions that are, mission critical and that are for salaried staff. This also means you can do contracted personnel, whether those are administrative positions that you have on a contract basis, and artists. So if you pay artists as dancers or teaching artists, performers, all of the different things that you might hire artists to do with your organization, and you pay them a fee, those can also be part of this CARES Act application. And the third main category is facilities costs. And really what the facilities costs break down into are your rent for any space or mortgage, any utilities, if you need to pay for security, insurance, building maintenance, and also cleaning services. And one thing to note is that the CARES Act grants are for requests of $50,000 in support. That's the only amount that you can request. So you can't request more, you can't request less, and it's what will be awarded. So it's not a situation where you might apply for $50,000, but only be awarded $25,000. It's $50,000 that you request, and if you receive the grant, then it'll be a $50,000 award. And again, this is very different funding for us. So unlike our normal grant applications, this does not have any kind of match requirement. There's no kind of cost sharing for this. So the budget that you submit to us in your application will really be for $50,000. That's it. Okay, next. Okay, so the application timeline. Similar to our normal grant process, this is a two-part application process. So step number one is coming up very soon. It's this Wednesday, April 22nd. And that's when part one has to be submitted to grants.gov. And that has to be submitted and go through by 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. We really encourage you to get it in before that. Grants.gov is a separate entity from the Arts Endowment, so we don't have control over grants.gov. And we, if there's a glitch or something like that, we are not able to help you with anything that goes wrong on grants.gov. So try to get it in, not at 11:58 p.m. Eastern time. Try to get it in as early as you can. And then the second part of the application, which is really the bulk of the application, the portal will open up on April 27th. and it will be open through May 4th. May 4th is the deadline to submit part 2 of the application. And again, that has to be by 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. We will be announcing the grant award recipients and notification one way or the other in June 2020. We hope by the end of June. And the earliest beginning date for costs, which we kind of call the period of performance, is July 1st, 2020. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I do want to draw your attention. If you're on arts.gov, our website, and you click on the CARES Act guidelines, it will take you to this main page that you see the screenshot of. So here's, you've got the deadlines in the grid, but I want to bring your attention to the to apply box that's on the right side of that screen, because that really has a lot of valuable resources, including the full grant program description, the applicant eligibility, which I just touched on. It will also, under application review, it will talk about the criteria and sort of the process that the applications will undergo. And then importantly, it will be the how to apply. So there's the whole how to apply part 1, submit to grants.gov. And then next slide is part 2. This I really want to bring your attention to. Part 2, submit materials to the applicant portal. This is a PDF. If you open up this document is really, it will walk you step by step through the CARES Act application. So if you're working on this application at 2 a.m. And you have a question, you don't need us to be in the office probably to get it answered. Check here and it will really walk you through every single line of the entire application. So it's a really great resource. And we always have this resource available for all of our grants. So in case you didn't know that, now you do. And so I wanted to go ahead and bring that up. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I mentioned the review criteria that the applications will undergo, and they are our congressionally mandated review criteria of artistic excellence and merit. I think notably, one thing that's different about the CARES Act applications and review process is that artistic excellence and artistic merit have been combined into one kind of mega criterion. Normally in our artworks and grant for art projects categories, they're their own, which means they each receive their own score, but it's just one great big kind of soup of criteria for this. And the way that artistic excellence and merit is going to be reviewed for the purposes of the CARES Act applications is looking at the quality of the organization. Really, I think importantly, the potential to have a significant and an immediate impact on the arts workforce, because remember, this opportunity is really about preserving jobs. The significance of the jobs that you are, applying for funding for to the mission of your organization or the core work of your organization. It'll also be looking at the ability to carry out the award, the resources involved, which again, there's no cost share or match. So resources might just be the other people or partners that you might need in order to help get you through this and the personnel. And then again, also looking at the communities that you are serving who are, and I know that this, the word underserved is not people's favorite word to use, but it is the language that we are, that we have to use. So also looking at organizations that are really serving underserved communities and populations such as those whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited because of where they live, by geography, by ethnicity, by economics, or by disability. And let's see. So I think, when you're talking about the different jobs, you want to be specific about those jobs. And let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. So this is going to be done by a panel process. So there's going to be readers from every single discipline that the Arts Endowment funds, so including in dance. They'll be reviewed by dance discipline readers. Some of you have actually maybe been invited to serve as a reader. It is the discipline directors who are sort of extending those invitations out, asking people to serve as readers. So we are drawing those readers and those panelists from the dance field, from past grantees, from people who have served as, excuse me, panelists for us before and are familiar with our process. And we are really looking with these grants. I know some of the questions that I've already gotten is this really only going to go to big organizations? Is this really only for big organizations? But we are really seeking and valuing this support getting to organizations across the whole country, across disciplines, and to organizations that are part of and working within communities who have historically not been served and not had the same kind of access to the arts that they should have. So, so that is something that all of the readers and the panelists will be looking at. Next slide. We do want to just draw your attention to some other upcoming Arts Endowment deadlines. Grants for Arts Projects, formerly called Artworks, that is scheduled for our second deadline of the year, July 9th. You can find the guidelines for that opportunity on arts.gov already. And I would also encourage you, because I think we all know and understand that this situation is still in flux. So as we get closer to that deadline, make sure that you are, checking our website just to see if there are any updates. The next, we also have an Our Town grant deadline that is due on August 6th, and we expect those guidelines to be ready in mid-May. All right, next slide. Okay, so I really want to turn the rest of this webinar over so that we can answer your specific questions. Because I know I can already see that we're getting a lot in via chat and some other things like that. So, but here, this information, our contact information for myself, for Juliana and Kate, it's up on our website on arts.gov. But here it is in front of you, and if you call that number, it will ring this cell phone and I will pick it up unless I am on the phone with somebody else. And you can send us an email and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Okay, with that, Juliana, Kate, and I are here to begin answering your questions. So we're going to start with the questions that have come in via chat. And let's see. Let me see here first. I see some of these are done. Okay, so, all right, here's the first question that we will address. If we are applying for salary support for several staff positions, does the request need to be focused on how those positions contribute to a specific project, or can the request be for how those positions support the organization as a whole? This is unlike how you normally apply to us. I know that we have really drilled into you all project with our normal funding opportunities, but this is not business as usual. So for this those do not have to be tied to an arts project. We are not asking you to describe an arts project. We're really asking you to apply for jobs, either salaried or contracted. If you need, in terms of making the case on why those jobs are important and the role that they play within your organization and your community, you need to talk about arts projects. If it's a community engagement coordinator or a dance teacher for some of your after-school programs, for example. You might end up talking about those programs or projects a little bit, but that is not necessary. This is not an arts projects grant. We really want to understand what the jobs are, the specific jobs that you're applying for, what their role is, why they're critical to your organization, and why they're critical to the communities that you serve and that you're a part of. Okay, I think I answered that one. Kate or Juliana, anything to jump in and add there? Okay. Next question. Do you recommend that we focus our applications on one of the three categories being discussed here, which would be salaries, fees for artists, and facilities costs? Yes, only apply for those. Those are basically the only allowable costs, and that's really the point of this CARES Act funding. So that is all that your budget should have in there, and it should be a budget for $50,000, no more, no less. Kate?
Just jumping into, and I think another way to read that is if you needed to just pick one of those three, which the answer is no. You can do any combination, one of those, two of those, all three of those. So whatever is the need that your organization is identifying, whether it be jobs or facilities or a combination of those types of things, it could be any combination that works best for you.
Great, thank you. All right, another one. Okay, here's, can the NEA CARES Act funding be used to support salaries in addition to PPP funds beyond the PPP 8 through 10 weeks of assistance? So I think the PPP, I can't remember exactly what that stands for, but it's related to, it's the Small Business Association, also CARES Act funding that came through for emergency relief to small businesses for payroll. And yes, our understanding is that you can apply for both an SBA, the PPP funding and loan, as well as to us through CARES Act, but you have to make sure that you are not applying for the same costs. And one way to do that would be that since our funding for CARES Act can't begin until July 1st of 2020, and it can go for 2 years, to just, even if it's the same positions that you applied to SBA for, to just make sure that it's a different time period when you come into us. But we also have to note, you know, that we are not, we're not running the SBA program or the PPP or any of the other CARES Act emergency funds that have gone to different agencies. So you should also check with those agencies to make sure that you're in line. Okay. Next question, is the April 27th through May 4th, is that a rolling deadline? No, it's not a rolling deadline. It's just when the portal opens up. So the portal for part 2, so the earliest that you could submit part 2 of the application would be on April 27th, but the hard deadline there for part 2 is May 4th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. But yes, you definitely can submit part 2 on the 27th or the 28th. Again, I think the earlier you get it in, you know, then you've got it off your plate for all of the other things that you're dealing with. Let's see. Next question, Kate or Juliana, I might let you take this one. Let's see, when will the option to sign and submit part 1 become available?
I can do that. This is Kate speaking.
Thanks.
It is available now. So if you go to our website, one of the slides that Sara had up earlier was where you can find that part 1 information, which is that submitting to grants.gov is available now. So do that now, because that deadline is April 22nd, and that is a hard and fast deadline. So you're definitely going to want to do that as soon as possible. And then in the meantime, can prepare your materials for that other deadline that we spoke about, April 27th through May 4th.
Thanks, Kate. All right, next question. Given the current situation where we're not able to serve any population directly other than virtually, how are organizations expected to show serving and undeserved for this application? I think that there is a direct question within the application that talks about what communities you are serving. And I think, making the case within your narrative about, how those positions are serving your different communities will be really important. So there is some room in the application to talk about that specifically and to really make that clear. Don't write from a place of making any assumptions, because the bigger panel and sort of the later stage of review will have people from multiple disciplines, not only dance. They might not know anything about you or your organization or your community. So you want to write from a place of just no assumptions. And I think that it might be time for us to switch the interpreters. Is that correct? Yes. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to pause here so that the ASL interpreters can switch, and then we will resume with the questions again. So hold tight for just a moment. Okay. I think we're ready, right? Great. Thank you. All right, so next question. Let's see here. Thank you all for staying with us through all of this. Okay, is there a length of time that you see grants being used for support, meaning over the course of a few months or a full year? I think that that's really up to you all. It is a 2-year grant period, so you do have 2 years over which you can use the funds. If you need to, if that serves your particular organization, it's $50,000. $50,000 is going to mean one thing to one size organization and a very different thing to another. So I think that you can pick, a smaller time period within that 2-year eligibility, for the specific support, and you can talk about that within your application, but it's really up to you. Okay, next question, which was related. So yes, that the project period can be up to 2 years, but is there a shorter project period that will be a priority? There's not one that's a priority. I think just sort of make the case, and I think right from, what is most urgent for you all. Again, keeping in mind that this is really to preserve jobs and keep the doors open. I mean, that's literally what we're saying over and over and over again for a reason. So I think, what is urgent and what is most critical for you. Next. In the short form for the CARES Act grant, it states to write NA for project title and description, and just want to check and make sure that that's the case. Juliana or Kate?
Hi, this is Juliana. I can jump in. Yes, that is the case. You don't write anything in those fields in the SF424 form, which is the step 1 basic information form. When you get into the applicant portal, which is the step 2 portion of the application, you are instructed as to what to type in those categories. So again, make sure that you're using the step 2 PDF instructions, because that will walk you through every single aspect of the application, so you know what to fill out where.
Okay, thanks. And another kind of budgety question. Artist salaries versus contracted personnel. Our dance company receives salaries but are under contract. Can we use direct cost expenses for salaried dancers, or must they be under the direct other because they are under contract with us? I think if they are on a salary, go ahead and put them under the salary section. We understand you have a contract, you know, that that governs and talks about what their salary is. But I think if you have them salaried, go ahead and put them there. Kate or Juliana, anything to add about that?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next. So my organization is very small, and the 50,000 would be about 25% of our budget. We're also losing 9 months of programming. Will the fact that our budget is so small call into question whether the budget or the flat award is appropriate? No, it should not. You know, really, since the guidelines were put out, all of the conversations that we have had amongst the directors and with our chairman and everybody really is about valuing organizations of all different sizes. And so it should not, it shouldn't, just because, you know, it's going to be smaller. And again, I think for a smaller organization, you might be making the case that, you know, this is going to keep some of your really mission critical jobs, or your rent. It's gonna help you keep your space open for a certain number of months or for an entire year or whatever the case may be. And I think what's really going to be important in these applications is really being able to talk about whatever size organization you are. What is critical? What is so urgent about your organization? You know, what is going to be lost? And I think that that's really the case to make, you know, especially knowing that not everybody who reads your application is necessarily going to be from the dance discipline or know your specific circumstances or know the value that you provide to your community. So that's really the place to try to write from. Big or small. Next question. How will you determine the artistic quality? I can't seem to find a narrative section to be answered on this. That is a very good question. The criteria that we were given to work with is artistic excellence and artistic merit. They're all kind of, you know, it's lumped together in one criteria, but there are no work samples. So I think it will be really about the quality, the excellence, the merit of your mission and your community, and what you all deliver. But I think, again, don't write from a place of assumption that people are going to understand why your organization is important, and the role that you play. Really try to make your case within the application. I know it's a little bit of, you know, not the maybe most logical fit, but that's what we're working with. All right, next question. In tab 3, project info, there are 3 parts to answer, but I only see 1 part for a 3,000 character limit. Is that the limit for each part or for all of them? Kate or Juliana, do you know?
I can jump in here. This is Kate. That section is for your whole narrative. So all the different points of the possibility that you could find funding for your job positions, your artist or contracts, and facilities are listed there, but not everyone's going to be doing all of them. And even if you are, 3,000 character limit is what you have to describe all of those needs and how you want to frame what you're requesting and contextualize that information.
Thanks, Kate. Next question, is there a preview available for part 2 questions? Yes. Again, that PDF document that's on the guidelines page that we did a screenshot, and it's called How to Submit Part 2. And then in parentheses, it says PDF. That will literally walk you through every single part of part 2. So you can open that up right now and start going through that. That's got every single thing in the entire application, the narrative questions, the budget lines, all of the other data that has to be collected, every single thing is in there. Okay, next question. Are funds dispersed in the same way, that is, after a percentage of the costs have already been incurred? Kate or Juliana, do you know the question of this off the bat?
Yeah, this is Kate. Yeah, it's the same rules that apply to all of your other grants, that you can get it at one time, you can get them in increments, you can request them as reimbursement, or if you're about to spend that money in the next 30 days, you can request it ahead of time. So all the same rules apply that you find in our terms and conditions from your previous awards.
Thank you. All right, next question. For rent support, can funds be used for rent of off-site storage units rather than the space used for programs and operations? I have not gotten that question yet. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't gotten this question yet. Juliana or Kate, have you?
This is Juliana. I have not gotten this question, but I mean, I could imagine a scenario where perhaps a dance company is keeping their archives offsite and maintain, their archives. And to me, that sounds like a compelling need. But we can check further just to double check and make sure that that's allowable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll double check with you on that. So if you want to send one of us an email directly so that we know who to contact, or we can also try to share any sort of follow-up answers with both IABD and Dance USA. But if you get in touch with us with that question directly with your contact information, then we'll respond to you directly too. Next, are small organizations likely to be funded with the grant amount being one size, and small meaning a budget under 300,000? Yes, I think so. That is certainly the intent, is that this is really meant to go to a diverse range of organizations, including the size of the organizations themselves, because we know that the ecology of the arts is really supported with different organizations, being able to do different things in their communities or with different communities, and not just, great big organizations or all, one size fits all. So next question, will expediency or fastness of submission factor into awarding decisions? No. It won't. So you are no more likely to get a grant if you submit on April 27th versus May 4th. So it's not like, I'm guessing that this question might come from the fact that some of the other emergency relief programs, like with the SBA and the loans, have already essentially given out all of the money that they had. And it was kind of a first come, first serve basis, I think. That's not the case with us, so no. Another question, does the application need to specifically be in dance? No, so there are, I think, 12 different disciplines that we fund with the Arts Endowment. And so if you're theater or design, literary arts, folk and traditional arts, multidisciplinary, music, opera, jazz, you'll be able to select which discipline you want, you identify with basically in the application. Next, we were told that CARES Act grant awards are $50,000, yep, no more, no less. So the budget should only reflect $50,000. Does that mean that the amount requested from the NEA can only be $50,000? Yes, that is what it means. But does it mean that total project costs or total project expenses must be equal to exactly $50,000? Yes, that is what it means. It really should just be $50,000 is what you're requesting, and you give us a budget for $50,000. The question goes on to say, if we ask for salary support, this grant would cover a percentage of salary cost for dancers, but not all of it for the performance period, and maybe in addition to the PPP funding and process. That's fine. We understand that if you're coming to us for partial salary coverage of 3 different positions in your organization, and you're basically asking for 1 month's worth of salary for each of those 3 positions, let's just say, then, we understand that, maybe the salaries for those 3 is actually greater than $50,000. That's fine. Just come to us though with the piece that you're asking us to support, which is requesting $50,000 and then show us $50,000 of expenses between the salary, the contract, and the utilities if you're asking for all 3 of those categories. So again, just try to, they did try to simplify this as much as possible. So just $50,000, remember that. Next question, are there staff positions that are ineligible? No, I don't think so. I think, I think the language in the question, and in the guidelines does talk about, positions that are mission critical or critical to kind of the core work of the organization. So I think that as long as you are able to make the case for that, then there should be eligible. But I haven't seen any sort of positions that are ineligible. Juliana or Kate, anything to add?
No, it's about saving jobs for your organization and talking about how those jobs serve the mission of your organization.
Okay, thanks. Next, let's see, the request, okay, I think we focused on that one, or we answered that one already. Let's see, okay. Can you speak to whether it would be preferable for funds to support a greater percentage of contract artist wages or staff salaries for a shorter period of time, or a smaller percentage of these wages for a longer period of time? Yeah, these are where I know we've gotten a lot of questions about, what's going to be more competitive or what's going to be a stronger application. And I want to be transparent in that we don't necessarily know the answer to that. We don't, because this is a unique category of funding for us. We don't have any past applications or panel comments and panel discussions to draw from in terms of how, what different responses were. I think the best answer, and I'll acknowledge that some of the answers that we have for you are not going to be that satisfying. But I think that really, if you can just write from the place of being able to make the strongest case possible for, for why these jobs that you are applying for are really critical to the organization, to the work that you do, to the communities that you're part of and that you're serving, I think that that's going to be the most important thing, more so, you know, than whether you only ask for a shorter period of time or a smaller percentage of the wages for a longer period of time. If you want to, you know, separately jump on a call and talk through a scenario more, you know, tomorrow or later this afternoon, you know, we can do that. But I think that's probably the best answer that we have for you. Okay, here's a technical question. What is the word count for part 1 project description? And you, go ahead.
Oh, this is Juliana. I'm happy to answer this. This is just a reminder that this is a 2-part application process. So part 1 is just submitting a basic information form to grants.gov. And if you look at the instructions for the part 1 form, you're not typing in any sort of project description or any sort of title. You're actually instructed to type in NA, non-applicable. Now, when you get to the part 2 section, the applicant portal section, where you are completing the full application, the project description section, you have 3,000 words. And again, this is reiterated in the part 2 PDF step 2 instructions. So when you get to the part 2 section in the applicant portal, you have 3,000 words to describe your project, which is the jobs and or facilities costs you are requesting funding for.
Thanks, Juliana. The second part of that question was, do you apply via tracks like dance or multidisciplinary? Yes. As part of the application, you'll determine which discipline you are applying under. Next question, to be eligible, does an applicant need to have received funding all 4 years of the eligible period, or just in 1 or more of those years? Just once. So if you got a direct grant from us anytime between FY17 through FY20, then you are eligible. And if you're just not sure, go ahead and check with us. All right, let's see. Next question, the guidelines talk about a start time. If we are shut down and don't know when we can open, how do we know what dates to give? Well, I think that if you are applying for jobs or for, you know, your rent or your space costs, then, you know, whether you're open for business in the sense of you're running your classes again, or you're touring again and performing again or rehearsing again, or whatever, you know, the bulk of your programming typically would be, it's not so much open, you know, that way. It's really just as of July 1st is when you can basically start tapping this grant to cover any of your salary or rent costs. And I would guess that those are ongoing, or hopefully would allow you to pay people that maybe you otherwise wouldn't in the month of July if you don't get this funding. So I hope I interpreted that question right and was able to answer that, I think. All right, next question. Can you talk about not double counting a staff person's time in other NEA or other federal grants? So if 25% of a staff position's salary appears in a regular NEA project grant, but the grantee isn't putting any NEA dollars towards that position, then can 100% of that position be included in your CARES Act project budget, or only up to 75% of it? Kate or Juliana, do either one of you want to jump in on that one? If not, I'll do it. Or
No, yeah, this is Kate. Yeah, you just can't have it count throughout any kind of federal government funding that you're getting more than 100%. So if you don't, let me read the question again. Staff salary. Even the match portion is part of your award. So still think of everything that's in your budget for grants and other projects is also a part of that. So I would say make sure it's very clear that it's not related to a project at all, that you already have funding with us from.
Thanks. All right, next question. If the need is for dancer salaries, does this mean that we need to calculate a performance period and percentage of a season that will be covered by exactly $50,000 only? Or as in past applications, will it be the entire budget for the funding area? And the ask is $50,000. It's $50,000. So figure out what combination of positions or time periods or percentage you want to apply to us for that totals $50,000. Try not to make this more complicated than it is. I know it's different because if you're used to applying to us, we really kind of drilled into you a number of different things, and this is totally the opposite. So this is your chance to come at us with your your jobs and your rent and your utility costs, and it's really just $50,000. That's it. Okay. Next, if we are applying for salaries and the total is slightly over $50,000, is that okay? Or does the project budget need to be exactly $50,000? It should just be $50,000. Next question is, what about workman's compensation insurance or health insurance? Can this funding support that? Yes, I believe so. Insurance is listed as one of the allowable costs under facilities. So put it in there. You need it. Oh yes, and someone is helpfully pointing out that PPP stands for Paycheck Protection Plan. Thank you, Dane. All right, confirmation question. The deadline application is not rolling. I think we answered that one. So yes, again, the deadline for part 1 is this Wednesday, April 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. And then the deadline for part 2 is May 4th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. You can submit before that, but that does not increase your chances of getting funded. All right, next question. Do all final reports need to be approved before an organization can apply for this program? No, they don't. You just need to make sure that if you are overdue for any final reports to us, that you get those final reports submitted to us, but they don't have to be approved yet. Just get them into us. Next, if we are applying for rehearsal weeks for multiple dancers, do we need to list each individual dancer position with their specific salary in the project description area, or can we save character space and summarize as 10 dancers at an average of XX per week and then show the detail by position in the budget? Yes, I think that you can. Yeah, I think, in the narrative, you really want to be economical. If you're going to be giving that specific information in a different place in the application, don't duplicate. Try to maximize your character count as you're asking. In the budget, though, do make sure that you are doing, one position, per line, or you can't do, and it does talk about this, I think I forgot to mention this earlier, you're not allowed to show salary ranges within the budget. So if you have 10 dancers in your company and 2 of them make this much, 4 of them make this much, and the others make this much, then you would need to have a different line item in the budget for each of those different salary levels, because they are not they're not wanting to sorry, I'm getting sort of fielding some multiple things here. I think we did that one. Okay. So I think if there's a lot of questions left, so I think for some of these that are super, super specific to your organization, just to try to maximize the amount of time that we have left, we might try to talk with you offline about some that are super specific. And if we've kind of touched on some of these, then we're gonna skip them so that we can get to some that we haven't talked about as much. So I'm gonna apologize if I don't get to everybody's question, but we're gonna try and do as much as we can. So let's see. Okay. My organization is multidisciplinary, but receives NEA funding for one specific discipline or program center. Can we request support for staff members that support existing NEA funded projects, or does it not matter either way? Should most of the application focus on activities related to the staff members who would be covered by the grant, or still focus on all organization-wide activities? I'm not 100% sure that I'm clear on that question. But I think that basically, again, I think try to write from the place of what is your most urgent and critical need. And that this is not a project application. It really isn't. So you want to talk about and apply for jobs that are, you know, critical to your organization and your community. And I think focus on writing about that. Next question, can we waive indirect costs? Yes, you don't have to include indirect costs, but they are allowable. And we know that some of you whose organizations are under universities or other kind of parent organizations, you may have to include indirect costs, and so that is allowable. Let's see, next question. When the need is great across an entire organization, is it more advantageous to apply for a smaller percentage of salaries? Okay, I think we kind of already touched on this one, versus a larger percentage of salaries. I think we already touched on that question, so I'm not going to answer it again. I am seeing some repeat questions here, so let's see. Yeah, again, if it's a really specific to your organization question, I think we'll try to get in touch with you offline to go over it. Okay, next question. If we're awarded a grant, when will we be able to submit reports and therefore receive funding? Is that at the conclusion of the period of support? Kate, I think you already answered this one.
Yeah, you don't need to finish your project in order to apply for get your funds. You can request funds at any point during the project, and this is true for all of your previous awards with the NEA, which you should have experience with, because that is one of the eligibility requirements.
Thanks. Okay, so I think that this is a good question, and we've gotten it some before this as well. The confusion around the word project, since this is for salaries and, you know, rent and utility expenses, how do we describe the project, or do we just describe our mission and our overall work? The word project is just kind of carried throughout a lot of our language because they based this application off of our normal one for lots of reasons I won't go into. Don't get hung up on the word project for this opportunity. It is about jobs. It's about keeping, your organizations going and open. So talk about that. You do not need to describe an artistic project. Talk about your organization, your mission, your communities, and what will be lost if you all go away. All right. Next, let's see. Let's see. I know that there's no match required, but are the funds awarded as a one-time $50,000 deposit, or will it be funded based on the actual expenses, partial reimbursement requests that they are spent? I think Kate kind of already went over that again, so I'm not going to go over that. Thank you all for hanging in there. I know you all are being really patient. I'm just trying to get through all of these questions.
Sarah, I can answer a couple questions while you look for the next one.
Great, thank you.
The people asking about final reports, you just have to be in good standing with the NEA with final reports that were already due. So you might have an open award and the period of performance is still open and you haven't finished your final reports because they're not due yet. That is okay. It's just about delinquent reports is what that eligibility requirement that you might see that's giving you pause about the final reports. That's just if they're overdue and you just need to be in good standing with the NEA. It has nothing to do with whether or not your deadline has not yet passed, so you don't need to turn them in prior to the CARES Act application.
Okay, and I'm still kind of scrolling through questions. As a presenter, can a grant support only U.S. artist contracts, or can it also be applied to an international artist company touring to the U.S.? I have not gotten that question before. I'm not aware if there is a limitation on that, but that's something that we can double check and be clear about. And again, we don't have a scenario like this to draw panelist comments or questions from in the past. But I think that you'd want to, since this is for the economic kind of relief for the US, I think if you're going to apply for international artists and companies, I think being able to really explain why that's mission critical and making the case for that to people who might not know your organization or your community will be really important. I can't really say whether it's going to be competitive or not, but I just would sort of bring you back to making that case. Yes, there will be a final report required if you get a CARES Act grant. Some questions about, how many of these grants are we going to be able to make, since 50,000 is the fixed amount. Based on the number of eligible arts organizations, I think, if everybody that was eligible applied, I think it looks like we'd be able to make direct grants to about 20% of the organizations, but we don't know how many people, how many organizations will actually come in. And I would also say too, again, since 40% of the funds went out to the state arts agencies and the regional arts organizations, definitely be in touch with yours to see what other opportunities might exist for you to apply for some emergency funding. Let's see. So let's see. Again, there were some more sort of like project-based questions. Remember, you are not applying for a project. You're really applying for jobs and facility costs. Yes, it can support insurance. I think we answered that, but just to reiterate. Okay, here's a question. Does including indirect costs in the proposal budget as demanded by one's university reduce one's competitiveness? And those are allowable. I know what you're asking is if it's competitive. And I think the answer is we don't exactly know. You know, we don't exactly know how the readers and panelists are going to respond to that. I think that you can make your case within the narrative. And you know, if you applied for a waiver and it was denied, if you tried to, you know, get those indirect costs waived, and you want to put that in your application so that the reviewers know what your intent is as part of your case making, then that's something that you can do. Ultimately, how it's going to be received, I think we just, you know, we can't answer. We don't know. We can't predict that. I wish I had a more satisfying answer for you, but I want to be honest. Let's see. Okay, I'm just scrolling for some more questions that we haven't already touched base on. Here's a good question. If we've already submitted part 1, but now have more clarity and we change our mind after this call, can we change it if needed in part 2? Kate and Juliana, Kate, will you take this one?
Yes. Yeah, there's very little that actually has to change because, as Juliana previously had mentioned, the project title and description is not a part of part 1. So you should have put NA, and if you didn't, don't worry about it. You can complete that in part 2. The only thing that may or may not change is your period of performance, or what we call the grant period, and that is something that can be changed at part 2. So there shouldn't be anything really that has locked you in for part 1 to part 2. You can make those judgment calls when that window of time is opened, April 27th through May 4th, if you have successfully completed part 1.
Okay, next question. Should positions in the project description match exactly with the positions in the project budget? Yes. I think as a grant writing tip in general, you want, Kate, this is yours, but since I'm talking, I'll say it, but I'll give you credit. You want your project narrative to tell the same story as your project budget. So however you decide to talk about things within your project description, you want to basically, you know, map that out exactly in your project budget. And really kind of rule out any potential questions that a panelist might have, because you talk about it this way in one place and then they don't see it listed in the budget. It's confusing. They can't go back to you to ask for clarification. So yes, always have them tell the same story. Okay, I'm scrolling for the next question. Will part 2 be open to companies that were not funded by the NEA since 2017? No. It's a 2-part process for this application opportunity, but the eligibility for the CARES Act is the same for the entirety of the application process. So I'm sorry about that.
Sarah, I'll just add to that. Even though you may not be eligible to apply directly to the NEA for funding, 40% of this CARES Act funding is going to state and regional arts organizations. So you should check with your state and regional arts organization to see if you're eligible to receive CARES Act funding through them.
Another good question. Can the grant be used to fund new staff positions? For instance, like a Zoom specialist? Yes. You do not have to apply for existing positions, right? It's a changed world, and we can expect further changes. So you can apply for both positions that do exist already in your organization or for new positions that you need to create based on how we're all working and doing our missions, now. I think, again, just make the case of why that is critical to your organization and your community. Clarification, when I say about 20% will be funded, is that 20% of all disciplines or 20% of dance grants? That's assuming all eligible organizations apply. About 20% of those applicants would be funded, but we don't know. What disciplines they would necessarily fall in. But again, check with your state arts agencies, your regional arts organizations, and also I know IABD has an emergency artist relief fund and some of the other, it's really going to take everybody working together to support all of us. More clarity on where you can find the instructions on the Part 1 section. Yes, so you can find, it's right above Part 2. So again, if you're on our website, arts.gov, click on the CARES Act guidelines, and on the right-hand side of that webpage will be a little box that has a number of different bulleted categories, and towards the bottom, it'll say instructions, for applying, or something exactly like that. Actually, I can read it. And Part 1 is there, and then there's Part 2. So they're both right on top of the other. And it is 4:01, so I'm just going to do a quick check-in to see I'm able to stay and cover some more of these questions. Although I think that there's like 99 plus new messages. I don't know if they're all questions. I think the likelihood is that I don't know if we'll be able to go, but let's see. I know that this is being recorded and it will be made available. And again, you can get in touch with myself or Kate or Juliana with any, especially if you have really specific questions about your organization. Email us, give us a call. And I think we are going to close. So I think I will turn it back to IABD and Dance USA to wrap us up. And a big thank you.
Thank you so much, Sara, and to the NEA staff for your incredible hard work and knowledge in carrying us through that with all of the questions. And thank you for continuing to be available following this through email for people to reach out to you. Given the Zoom bombing that has happened, Denise and I wanted to just close out with some joint remarks. So I'll kick it off and then I'll turn it over to Denise. IABD and Dance USA want to acknowledge the Zoom bombing incident that happened during this organized Zoom event regarding the NEA CARES Act funding. The NEA invited IABD and Dance USA to work together and alongside one another to bring this important information to the dance sector, and we will continue to work in concert with one another.
We recognize that Zoom bombing is a traumatic experience and will be reporting this matter to Zoom USA. IABD and Dance USA seek to promote equity, inclusion, and diversity, and work to erode racism, sexism, and hateful language that offends anyone in our communities. While we cannot control others' evil doings, we take our mission seriously, our visions seriously, and our values seriously. And those include all the people, all the time. Our two teams desire to work together, and we remain committed to providing services to the dance community. We thank everyone for attending the event today, and please allow us 48 hours to provide edited copy of this seminar for future use and reference. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, Kate, and Juliana. Awesome job.
Yep. And thank you to the IABD team. Omar,
Yeah.
thank you for the response.